The Baltimore Orioles reach a new lease deal with Maryland officials for the next 30 years, but even then, there's still a big catch we will discuss. Major League Soccer officially pulls out their first teams out of the ongoing Lamar Hunt US Open Cup for soccer. What does that mean for MLS in the future? Will the NHL finally play in the Winter Olympics again after years of ongoing hiatuses? And what to make of the revamped WNBA Commissioner's Cup trophy and Commissioner's Cup tournament for the upcoming 2024 season. That and more in our final episode of Press Row for the year of 2023, right now.
Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry, 24/7 shopping available. 160920 is the code. Show her some love, like she showed us. K&A Custom Crafts on Facebook.
Time to end the year on a good note. It is our final episode of Press Row, folks, for the year of 2023 on this Monday in prime time, December 18th, 2023. Again, trying to end our year of Press Row coverage live here on C2C on a good note. As always, folks, Callan McClurg joining you here from the home studio in San Diego, again, putting a bow on our live coverage for 2023 here this evening for Press Row. We will, though, folks, still be here, though, doing other programs, but for the time being, after tonight, we'll be on a very, very, very extended long work and holiday break after tonight's episode here on Coast to Coast, which does bring me to a very important note real quick, folks, that following tonight's program and a long holiday break, we'll be back live on the air with you folks on January 3rd, a Wednesday afternoon, January 3rd, 2024, at our usual 3:30 p.m. time spot here on C2C following today's program. We will, though, folks, be having some best of shows here, a couple of episodes that are under the hour threshold. They'll be re-airing in place on our Wednesday and Thursday and Monday time slots here when we would be on the air. But, of course, me being away at work or, again, on this break, though, we will be re-airing some old episodes of Press Row here when, again, that time does allow. But, of course, folks, we're in the primetime spot here tonight, leading you up into the Immaculate Grid at 9 o'clock, this evening with myself and our esteemed panel of co-hosts to try to fill up those Immaculate Grids at about 9 o'clock local time, 11 o'clock central in the evening here on Coast to Coast Entertainment. But, of course, folks, we welcome your input again, questions, comments, or concerns. We'll do our absolute best to make sure that those comments are, in fact, read live on the air here this evening. Beginning, folks, over in Major League Baseball, the Baltimore Orioles have struck a deal for a new 30-year lease extension, but sadly, there is a catch right now per Front Office Sports and their lead writer, Eric Fisher. But the Baltimore Orioles have finally completed a formal lease extension with Maryland state officials, ending years of uncertainty surrounding the ball club. But even now, there is still a big catch. Facing a New Year's Day, December 31st expiration of the team's existing lease to the publicly owned Oriole Park at Camden Yards, the team completed a new 30-year pact with the Maryland Stadium Authority and Maryland Board of Public Works on Monday, confirming what had been first announced back in September. That deal will follow several years of back-and-forth talks, or follows several years of back-and-forth discussions, talks, which will keep the team at the downtown ballpark and, for now at least, eliminates what had been several years of steady but unconfirmed rumblings and rumors of a potential franchise relocation and recent weeks of renewed negotiating chaos. Maryland State Governor Wes Moore told reporters today, under this deal, we will keep the Orioles in Baltimore for the long term with a no relocation clause under any scenario, open and close quote. That boast, however, is definitely true for only for a limited time. The Orioles do have the option to reduce the deal to a 15-year term if they are not successful in securing necessary government approvals for a separate ground lease and development plan for the adjacent B&O warehouse and surrounding Camden Yards area within the next 4 to 6 years or by 2027. Several state legislatures previously sought to separate the redevelopment pact from the core stadium lease, and they achieved a partial win there. The Orioles team option, however, could soon reignite many of the same concerns in recent years if the development fails to come to fruition and materialize. But that was not front and center in the team's meeting in comments today. The pact also allows the Orioles and MSA to tap into $600 million in state bonds for upgrades to the ballpark, a provision also being utilized by the neighboring NFL's Baltimore Ravens at M&T Bank Stadium. All the agreed upon lease terms will carry over to a new owner if Peter Angelos and his family sell the Orioles. The lease agreement closes. The lease agreement, I should say, closely follows a local media rights agreement between the Orioles, Mid-Atlantic Sports Network, or MASN, and the Nationals between the 2017 and 2021 Major League Baseball seasons. As much folks as the Oakland A's are at the forefront right now of relocation talks and stadium issues, and we had the Rays. I think I read a report a couple days ago that the St. Petersburg City Council actually told the Rays, change your name to St. Petersburg, get rid of Tampa Bay, or you may not be able to find or get your money for your stadium. That there's been more turmoil, I feel like, though, with stadium projects. Between the A's, that's one thing. But then, like, even the Diamondbacks having their problems with Maricopa County, the Rays having their problems now, even after they got the go-ahead for their new ballpark in St. Petersburg. But also then the Orioles, I think, were probably, in a lot of people's minds, probably the last team out there that we would have probably envisioned having been stuck, though, with a stadium problem. But again, the ownership situation right now, not the best with the Orioles. Again, perhaps them relocating or whatever it may in fact be, though. But I agree, though, with our good man, Brandon Herrera, though. He says, man, how weird would it be to not see Baltimore having a baseball franchise? And you think, though, and I know I made some probably weird remarks, though, when the news came out that the A's had gotten all 30 owners on board for the vote for Vegas, that I didn't think that the A's were an iconic brand in baseball. Still don't quite think that way because them kind of being, in a way, like behind the Giants in the Bay Area. More recent success, though, 3 world titles by the Giants, and them not having so many issues with finances. And despite reports or comments made by former players about, the homeless population and the crime in the city is keeping free agents away from the Giants, that the Orioles, though, I think, still, though, I think a big name in the game like the Athletics, though, but again, not like that earth-shattering Yankees, Red Sox, major market syndrome, or small market syndrome, though. But definitely, though, like Cal Ripken Jr. being a part of those teams for so long. On top of the fact, though, of the 2 titles back in the 70s, Brooks Robinson winning those, 11-plus gold gloves, Jim Palmer out here as a big-name Oriole, and then, of course, Cal Ripken Jr. with the Ironman streak, though, of the most consecutive games played. But I agree, though, Brandon, it's about the history of the Orioles more than anything else, though, is kind of my point here, is that the Oriole name not being in Baltimore would be a little bit strange, though, and especially, I think, though, too, with how the dueling stadiums have worked so well, though. We've seen this, I think, in Kansas City with the Harry Truman Sports Complex, with Kauffman Stadium for the Royals, and across the parking lot is Arrowhead Stadium. Same in Philadelphia for a long time. You've always had the Phillies ballpark now on top of the Eagles playing nearby, the Sixers and Flyers playing nearby. Baltimore, same way, the Orioles and the Ravens playing in the Camden Yards area. Like, those are great partnerships there where you have both of your, both, if not all of your major league franchises playing on the same chunk of property where the area well. Where you always go for a pregame meal or after a game when your team wins a game or what have you. But I think it's more than anything else, though, this at least keeps one franchise in their current area. This isn't about, the Capitals and the Wizards right now in D.C., who might be going to suburban Virginia, from what we've been hearing about Ted Leononis and Monumental Sports wanting to move the Caps and the Wizards out of D.C. into the suburbs of Virginia. Again, kind of detracting away from the fan base. So I do think, though, that this, at least right now, calms the talks, though. But also that the Orioles have a 15-year option. After, halfway through, they can choose to maybe opt out. It may, in fact, hinge on the ownership group, though. But at least today, though, that this, I think, curbs any speculation of this franchise leaving. Because I think that, especially I think in baseball, folks, I think the last thing that Major League Baseball wants to have happen is have a third franchise on top of the Athletics problems, the Rays right now between Tampa Bay and St. Petersburg, and what that bit of a mess is right now with maybe the name being in question about the ballpark project for the Rays. Baseball does not want to have, or did not want to have, a third different franchise get stuck in the mud when it boils down to a stadium problem. So at least, and you know what, though, I think what helps, though, I think a lot of this is true, though, especially in the case of the Athletics. Simple. It's winning. I think when the Orioles turn around their club like they did last season, going from long-standing triple-digit losing seasons, young superstars, Adley Rutschman, Austin Hayes, Gunnar Henderson, Anthony Santander, those players, those signings right there, or those players being in the mix, though, and how this club turned things around, though, on the field, though it was early round, first round exit, after them winning 100+ games, though, like what a turnaround that is, going from triple-digit losing seasons to 100+ wins. That reinvigorates that fan base. That reinvigorates interest. And I think that this, coming on the heels, though, of the successful past season, this can come, I think, at a better time for the Orioles. And I think, though, as well, that having the public bonds, though, still being there from both Oriole Park and Camden Yards, that should help, though, with whatever the Orioles want done to spruce up the ballpark. I think we're kind of entering that time now, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years now, where a lot of these ballparks built back in the 90s, early 2000s, like Petco Park right now, they're undergoing another renovation. 20 years coming up for that ballpark being open here in San Diego, that you have to, like, kind of in a way right now, we're seeing how stadiums are almost like the team on the field, though. They have to keep up with the changing times right now, where people want more luxury boxes or suites or social spaces to, bring clients out with their group or what have you. But I definitely love the fact that the Rays had this chance to at least have that option. Like, okay, we have, 15 years later, what do we do here? But I think more than anything else, though, this, I think, should be in any clause. I don't know, Brandon, how you would feel about this. The fact, though, that the Maryland state governor says there is a no relocation clause under any scenario in the lease deal. I believe whenever a lease does come up, either the state has to come forward and say that it needs to be in writing, I think. Because especially, I think, though, in baseball, you don't want to have another Oakland to Vegas situation where you totally, in a way, alienate a franchise fan base who turns their back on the ball club. The team basically gives up spending to put out a winning product, or at least a competitive ball club on the field, though, that I kind of wonder more and more if and when the no relocation clause becomes a thing. But, folks, today's announcement, though, huge, though, for the Baltimore Orioles and their franchise. They have struck a deal for a 30-year lease extension at Oriole Park and Camden Yards, with a very small hitch, though, in that they have an opt-out clause after 15 seasons, which, again, could perhaps stir more of the rumblings that we've been hearing about, perhaps maybe some type of relocation. But, again, I really don't think that would be applicable at this rate. A couple of comments real quick from Brandon Herrera. Brandon, I agree with you, man. I don't want to see the A's leave Oakland either. But I kind of feel like, though, Brandon, that ship is sailed, I think, especially now that we have the 30 owners on board for the A's to move. John Fisher does not seem to be at all interested in Oakland, though there was a very interesting story I read today, though, that apparently the A's have actually bought half of the rights, or half of the deal, from the Oakland Alameda County government. They are now half owner of the Coliseum for one more season, maybe. So that is a whole weird situation brewing right now up in the Bay Area. And I agree, bro. And I agree, Brandon. I don't want to see a franchise or a city sit through what I sat through in 2017 when the Chargers left for Los Angeles. Because, like I said here, when we heard the vote come through a few months, I think a month or so ago, whenever a team relocates, like when the A's do in fact move out of the Coliseum after next season and maybe play in San Francisco or go to Vegas and play at the Aviators ballpark in Summerlin, that city goes into the sports graveyard when a franchise moves out of their market. Warriors left, as I've mentioned plenty of times. The Warriors left, the Raiders have gone, and now the A's will be moving pretty soon. And also, Brandon says, one small issue, Cal, you can't always say it's about winning. Look how good the Rays teams were the last 6 to 10 years and still can't draw fans. I agree, Brandon, 100%. I know that winning doesn't solve all your problems, but it certainly helps cure the fever, or it helps in a way stop you from sneezing or coughing up your lung, basically 9 times out of 10. It's not the all-in BN remedy of winning, but it's I'd say it's a good 90% of the factor that winning usually helps that out, though, because I know about the Rays and their problems again. I read a very weird story that the A's, or not the A's, but that the Rays may have to change their name to St. Petersburg because of the council wanting to have their name and brand out there. So imagine that, though, that the Rays go from the Devil Rays when they first came into baseball, become the Rays in 2008. Then if they do, in fact, get this ballpark built in St. Petersburg, you have to change your name again to the St. Petersburg Rays. Never-ending story. And also, Brand says that the A's moving is a done deal, and sadly it is, though. But again, very weird story, though, about the A's, I believe, from Ballpark Digest today, apparently chipping in to buy, or at least take, half ownership, I believe, of the Oakland Coliseum. Over in Major League Soccer, a very startling and big shakeup for American soccer, but Major League Soccer announced plans earlier on the weekend to not send MLS first teams to the famed Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup in 2024. Instead, they are opting to enter teams from the MLS Next Pro League, the league's 2-year-old development league, to partake in the country's oldest soccer tournament. The league made this announcement on Friday, which comes after a decision made by League Commissioner Don Garber, who criticized the state of the tournament during an open session of the U.S. Soccer Federation Board of Directors way back in May, calling the Open Cup a very poor reflection on what it is that we are trying to do with soccer at the highest level, open and close quote. Part of Garber's comments before MLS Cup final last Saturday up in Columbus, Ohio, he said, I made those comments because I believe that if we're going to have our pro teams competing in a tournament that is the oldest tournament of its type anywhere in the country, we all need to embrace it from our federation to our respective leagues and give it the profile and give it the support that it needs. If we cannot do that, then we all should be together and decide that there needs to be a new plan, open and close quote. U.S. Soccer fired back, saying it was currently reviewing MLS's decision by saying that MLS notified U.S. Soccer today of their Board of Governors vote regarding the 2024 Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup, and our staff is currently reviewing. U.S. Soccer and our members remain committed to the success of the historic U.S. Open Cup and look forward to engaging with all our stakeholders on the future of the tournament, open and close quote. This decision, though, by Major League Soccer took into account negative feedback from the club level about fixture congestion, especially after MLS introduced a new Leagues Cup tournament alongside Liga MX last year. And there's also been a growing sentiment around the league that the Open Cup's prestige has been diminished despite its long, storied history. The MLS statement further reads in part that in recent months, the MLS Sporting and Competition Group has been collaborating with U.S. Soccer to shape the future role of MLS teams in the Open Cup. MLS remains committed to working with the Federation to evolve and elevate the Open Cup for everyone involved in the years to come and years ahead, open and close quote. The Open Cup was founded back in 1914 and is a single elimination format tournament, provided the only meaningful competition between the country's first division and the rest of the American soccer ecosystem, which was especially notable given the country's lack of promotion and relegation. For another league like the USL, which fields 36 pro teams between the USL Championship League and League One last season, the Open Cup has served as an opportunity for its teams and players to test their skills and themselves against the best in the entire country. Just recently as 2022, the USL Championship team, Sacramento Republic, reached the Open Cup final, but eventually lost, though, to MLS side Orlando City FC. The last time that a non-MLS franchise won the tournament was the Rochester Rhinos all the way back in 1999. In recent seasons, though, some MLS clubs had already opted out of filling their strongest lineups, using the competition to give playing time to lesser used first team members. MLS Next Pro players, and in some cases academy players, the deeper into the tournament teams got, the more likely that they were to prioritize the competition. First team MLS players, by the way, will not be allowed to join up with the MLS Next Pro teams in the latter stages of next year's tournament, however, per a league spokesperson telling ESPN sources. One quick comment from Brandon before we get back to this topic here again, folks. Major League Soccer announcing their plans to withdraw all 29 and soon to be 30 first teams out of the famed and long-time ongoing Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup soccer tournament for next year. But Brandon first writes, though, he says, Cal, I feel that the biggest issue with fans not showing up, yes, can be stadium issues like in Oakland and in Tampa, but the price is to just go to the game, get a couple of drinks and something to snack on during the game. This is not cheap entertainment. And I actually think, though, Brandon, that there was a very good story, though, on FOS today or even yesterday that said that 2023, though, for all that it was, though, with like a great year, though, with everything, that, again, the expenses now are becoming a major factor. Now, you can be like myself, basically, when you work in sports for 15 years, you kind of, you know, friends who work with teams who can get you in for free, but still, though, like prices of alcohol, prices of a hot dog, chips, and soda at a college basketball game, like all this stuff still does add up, though, especially in my case, when you go to a lot of NHL games, you have to travel beyond county lines to go to Anaheim or Los Angeles to watch the Ducks or Kings play. And again, you're factoring in paying for gas. You're factoring in parking. You're factoring in, you know, food and drinks and merchandise and other factors like that, where it's not as cheap as it once was. So I do, in fact, and I think, though, as well, though, Brandon, when you have teams like the Athletics, for example, trying to basically price people out, though, I think that one of our infamous co-host here who works with the AZM said they have jacked up ticket prices for next season to, I think, further just keep fans out of their games and try to, in a way, like tell the league, it's not us, it's all the paying customers who aren't here. So I agree, though, Brandon, by a lot. Things aren't cheap, especially entertainment-wise right now when you want some fun and leisure on a weekend. But back, though, folks, to our matter at hand here again, Major League Soccer, again, announcing their plans to withdraw the first team. So the top team from all 29 and 30 clubs of Major League Soccer would not be partaking in the famed Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup for next season. I, folks, definitely agree with the statement made, or a couple of things here. The number of games now that we are seeing Major League Soccer franchises play, you're talking about a 34-game regular season right now, on top of teams mixing in other games, whether it be the Open Cup or the newly introduced Leagues Cup, where, again, you're playing teams from across the border in Mexico and in South America. Or you have other interesting games, though, where you will play an exhibition game against a big-name European league club like Man U or Barcelona during their summer tours when they come to the States, though, that I believe it is more of the wear and tear on players. It is the match congestion, as was written here in this story. But I believe that the number one main concern, though, is that Major League Soccer franchises no longer view the Open Cup as a very big tournament to play in now. Because now I think where soccer is in 2023 going into next year than where it was in 1996, where we first saw MLS begin operation, is that soccer in this country has evolved in a very great way. We've had more people get invested. People nowadays actually look at soccer as not being an afterthought. You can look at the numbers when it comes down to American soccer viewership, when it comes to the World Cup, when it comes to European, EPL and UEFA and other leagues around the world, that there is a interest in the sport here. But now I think, though, that I would agree more that the main reason I think, though, that teams are pulling out their top players or their top team out of the Open Cup is simple. The Open Cup probably, and I would agree, though, doesn't have as much true meaning as the Philip Anschutz title trophy for MLS Cup or winning a bigger, perhaps bigger name competition like the Leagues Cup, where, again, you're facing some of the biggest names in South America or in Mexico, again, like Club America and the Cholos, Cruz Azul, Club Monterrey, big name clubs in Mexico south of the border. That the Open Cup, though it stood the test of time, but from 1914 until now, that I just don't think, though, that MLS is embracing the Open Cup like it once did. Because I recall a long time ago, back when the league first began, though I was very young, though, but I can recall, though, like when the Galaxy would win the Open Cup, or the Red Bulls would win it, or the Fire, or DC United. At that time, like 96 all the way till probably the mid-2000s, maybe into 2007 when David Beckham first came to the Galaxy, maybe even recently. But I think in the early days, though, of Major League Soccer, again, from 96 till probably, I'd say, theoretically, maybe 2007 or maybe even now, Major League Soccer clubs, I felt like, other than MLS Cup, they put their heart and soul into the Open Cup because I think they wanted the league to grow and that they wanted the league to not die. Like, hey, we've had this tournament going on for this long stretch of time. But now, again, I think it kind of is viewed now as an afterthought because I think ultimately, if you're not winning the Phil Anschutz Cup for being the MLS champions in mid-December, it's not viewed as maybe the big name championship or the big name trophy. Because I know that, like I said, like in the early days of MLS or even like early 2000s through the 2010s, that I can recall a lot of times that teams always put an emphasis to win every game possible, whether it was Open Cup or, of course, in the postseason. But I mainly think it boils down to two factors. The Open Cup does not mean as much to MLS as it once did. And also, it is now match scheduling and match congestion, where, again, we're looking at a 34-game season for MLS, though. Then you factor in teams who get automatic berths into the Leagues Cup. And then you think of CONCACAF also being a thing as well, with another, like you have two separate or three, like basically teams would be juggling 2 or 3 different schedules on top of the Major League Soccer regular season schedule. Now, I will say that the only saving grace maybe, or the only good thing about the Open Cup is the Open Cup in a way led to MLS clubs being born out of the Open Cup final. I can think of Brandon and the Loons in Minnesota, Cincinnati, Sacramento before their bid got denied by San Diego on numerous fronts. But I also think, though, that sadly, this kind of in a way feels like a little bit, this might be a very weird comparison, but also Major League Soccer clubs could view this a lot like those pay-for-play college football games versus that FCS school, that D2 school, or that less inferior opponent. Because I believe that the MLS teams got like multiple 5 or 6 round buys until like the last 32 teams or 30 teams. Then they finally got to play, though. But again, I think it goes back to my point, though, that the U.S. Open Cup for soccer is not being viewed as a big name trophy like it once was. Again, 96 all the way till about recently. Because I think, again, it boils down, though, to a oversaturated soccer season schedule. So you want teams in MLS to play 34 regular season games and then try to squeeze in a Leagues Cup game, then an Open Cup game, then a CONCACAF game. Like, there's no way possible here, and especially now that you're going to 30 teams in 2 years, though. Those are my main two factors. But I would also think, though, that it would be a great way, I think, though, for the Open Cup to still obviously be played, though. But again, give a lot of love, though, to these USL clubs like in Rochester and in Sacramento, Phoenix, Orange County, So I think it's more of a thing, though, that I would agree with Don Garber and with I agree with the commissioner's office, and I agree though as well with the teams, though. Pulling out the first teams from the U.S. Open Cup is the right thing to do for two reasons. The Open Cup does not quite mean as much as it used to in the early days of Major League Soccer because soccer, though it still has room to grow in the States, the Open Cup is not quite as valuable or needed now for MLS. And also 34 regular season games on top of other games, though, with adding in games as more time goes on. I think you're looking at wear and tear on players, though, again, and almost like a year-round schedule. With that in mind, folks, over to the NHL and the ever-elusive ongoing nightmare about whether or not the NHL will again allow their players to partake in the Olympic Games coming up in Italy in 2026. The NHL players and NHL player participation in the Olympic Games has been one of League Commissioner Gary Bettman's thorniest issues for more than a generation of talent. A meeting this week between the league and the NHL Players Association, the IIHF, and the IOC could help finally resolve the matter at hand, not only for the upcoming Winter Olympics in 2026, but also on a longer-term basis. Sportsnet in Canada reports that the session is aimed in part toward establishing a broader rotation between the Olympics and the NHL's own run World Cup of Hockey tournament. Bettman said the following quote at a recent Board of Governors meeting that the ultimate goal is to have an Olympics 2 years, and then 2 years later, the World Cup. 2 years later, Olympics. 2 years later, World Cup. That's the cycle that we're trying to get on, open and close quote. NHL players were first allowed to compete in the Olympic Games back in '98, and participation has wavered based on several factors, including logistics of suspending the league schedule, agreements on key costs such as insurance, harmonizing the Olympic tournament with the World Cup, the pandemic, and, of course, geopolitical concerns going on in the world. Many of the issues ultimately led to the NHL players not competing in both 2018 and 2022, and as recently as November, Bettman called the issues of the Olympics a logistical nightmare and very expensive. Despite those hurdles, the commissioner also acknowledges the bigger role that the Olympic Games will play in helping growing the game across the globe. He further tells FOS that we're focused on wanting to do something, and hopefully we will, open and close quote. In the meantime, though, the NHL is also finalizing plans for a scaled-down 2025 international tournament that will operate involving teams representing Team USA, Canada, Sweden, and Finland in 2025. Folks, it is a nightmare, logistically, for both the NHL and the WNBA, as we'll talk about next year. It is a bit of a nightmare to try to play your season around an Olympic year because you're looking at a 2 to 4 week, if not whole month-long stoppage of your season to let your best players play for their country. And in the time that I've been in sports media, I've had the chance to talk to Candace Parker from the Las Vegas Aces. I have had a chance to talk to Haley Skamura from the U.S. Women's National Ice Hockey Team, who now plays for the PWHL franchise in Ottawa. And when I asked them about their time playing in the Olympics, you could really tell, though, that Candace and Haley were just ecstatic being able to wear the red, white, and blue and have USA across the front of their jerseys. And I know it's a very big international pride thing with a lot of these players that they're proud of where they come from, despite maybe that they have issues back home with their country or their state or whatever. But there's a very big sense of pride when you put on the country jersey, not just your current franchise, but when you put on the red, white, and blue for Team USA, you put the maple leaf on for Canada, you put the 3 crowns on for Sweden, you put the lion on for Finland, or you put on your country's logo. There's a very sense of personal pride that you have, like you're representing an entire nation for 2 to 4 weeks out of the year, though. But again, though, when the Olympics take place, though, in the middle of your season, like the NHL and the WNBA, it does create a bit of a, not really, it is a nightmare situation. Because what if one of your big name players gets hurt during the course of the games, and then their franchise back over here with both hockey or basketball, they lose your services for 6 to 8 weeks because you got hurt, though, playing on the Olympic stage, though. And that's why I think that the league has been somewhat hesitant for quite a while here, them being the NHL, because you're looking at maybe insurance costs. You're looking at trying to get the World Cup of Hockey every 2 years. Again, COVID was a factor. And obviously, like every Olympic Games, political concerns and political tension. But again, though, I think, though, that there needs to be something done to allow the big name players to go. I do recall, I think, fairly recently that there was like a resolution, I want to say, or that there was a stipulation, I think, added one year that individual players were allowed to go to the Olympic Games to play for their country. I think a lot of us out there would rather see amateur athletes play. Basketball and hockey perhaps being the two, I would say, main sports out there that you would probably want college kids or amateurs to play in the Olympic Games so the big name studs don't get hurt, though. But, though, in a sport like the NHL, though, where you kind of need the star power to grow the game globally. Again, I hear that all the time again about growing the game. And you also think, though, that the NHL went to Australia for the first time ever this past preseason this year, having the Kings and Coyotes play at the Rod Laver Arena down in Melbourne. I think the NHL mainly wants participation for the Olympics, though, but that they want to keep this 2-year cycle of the Olympic Games in 2026, and then they want to have the World Cup of Hockey in 2028. They want to have something going on every 2 years. I think that at this stage right now, I'd be very interested to hear what comes out of this meeting, though, and how the vote does go. But I also would definitely, but I think, though, folks, that this bargaining chip should be on the table. Let's hypothetically say that the league says we're not going to do, that we're not going to shut down the league to have to have players play for their country. My bargaining chip is this, though. If there is an NHL player out there, Crosby, McDavid, Zegras, Bedard, Kane, any big name player out there, Ovechkin even, if you want to represent your country in the Olympic Games, but the league isn't going to stop operation, we will give you the chance to leave your team to go play and represent your country. I think that'd be a very, very fair, not bargain chip, fair consolation prize. Because I think, though, that you risk losing your audience, you risk growing your sport, or you risk perhaps getting new eyeballs on the game if you're shutting down your league for a full month almost, if not 4 weeks out of the year, to let players partake in the Olympic Games in the NHL. Because the NHL is a sport here growing very great. They're going to raise the salary cap next year again for the third year or fourth year in a row, which is great news for the NHL. But I think, though, that a full-blown stoppage or suspension of the season to allow the league to stop play, to have all the players play for the respective countries, I think you risk losing traction. You risk losing getting people engaged, though, who maybe, as I've said on this program about the NBA in-season tournament, you risk perhaps losing viewership numbers as you begin coming down the home stretch, though. That's also, I think, why I would be reluctant to have the NHL maybe stop the season, though, again, it may help teams get better. But again, though, you also, again, factor in big-name player getting hurt, though, playing in a non-NHL event, though, and that cost the Oilers or the Bruins or a big-name organization with big-name stars, that hurts their playoff chance now because we let them play overseas, or we let them play in the Olympics. So I'm going to be very, very curious to see how, in fact, that this vote goes, though. Because me personally, I don't mind players playing for their country. Again, like I said earlier, having talked to a lot of players who played in the Olympics, again, it's about that badge of honor. It's about playing for your country. It's more of a personal pride thing, I think, when you put on the red, white, and blue for Team USA, for example. It just means a bit more, I think, if you catch my drift here. It's one thing, to put on like the Phoenix Suns jersey, like I'm wearing tonight for Kevin Johnson, or putting on your team jersey. But again, it just means more putting on Team USA's jersey, Team Canada's jersey, Finland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, any team out there. It just, I think, means more to players putting on the country flag for the Olympic Games. Now, the World Cup of Hockey, I think, though, folks, was always a very fun event to watch, though. I would think, though, that may have to be a preseason event. Because it goes back to my point, though, that I don't think you can risk losing whatever traction you've built, though, by getting people to come to games. But also, though, you'd be stopping your season kind of when things get good, though, and they get kind of spicy, because now you're coming down the home stretch entering March and April. You're stopping the season in February, coming back late February, early March, though, I feel like it hinders the excitement about the postseason stretch, because now you're kind of leaving your fan base high and dry, who maybe get spruced up for when the playoffs do roll around, though. So this will be a very good story to keep an eye on. Again, folks, I really would still like to see some participation from the NHL in the Olympics, whether it is the full-blown stoppage or my main thing is let the players pick. Let's not in a way shutter up operation for a few weeks here. Let the players determine if they want to go play in the Olympic Games. But I definitely, folks, would love to see more, or would love to see the NHL get back in the Olympic Games. I think, though, it will boil down, though, to what I believe will be talked about with this vote, though, about, again, the logistics, the insurance, where is global tension and global politics at, and other factors that may, in fact, pop up, though. But I'm totally, folks, in favor of NHL participation for the Olympics. It's more of a matter of how to go about it. I would personally go with let the players choose, and then maybe go from there when it's all said and done. One more story here, folks, for the evening here, but the WNBA on Monday unveiled their 2024 season schedule and also unveiled a revamped in-season tournament format for the 2024 Commissioner's Cup in the upcoming season. The WNBA will look to continue its momentum into 2024 with another record number of games to be played and more changes to their own in-season tournament after the league saw its best viewership in 21 years this past season. The 2024 season schedule was unveiled on Monday, will begin on Tuesday, May 14th, and see each of the 12 ball clubs play 40 regular season games. That is up from the previous 34 games and 36 games between the years of 2020 and 2021 and even 2022. And that will match the same number of games played last season. The future broadcast schedule will come out, but in 2023, combined viewership for the league across Disney networks of ABC, ESPN, and ESPN2, and even CBS Sports was up 21% compared to the prior season. Games were also shown on Amazon Prime Video and on ION Television. Altogether, the league is believed to bring in more than $40 million per year through its current television broadcasting deals. The regular season will include a break for the Paris Olympic Games from July 21st through August 14th before picking back up and then concluding the season in mid-September on the 19th. And after the success of the NBA's inaugural in-season tournament, the WNBA will modify its own IST, condensing its Commissioner's Cup games to a 2-week period in June that will bring 5 matchups for each team against conference opponents. Since the debut back in 2021, the Commissioner's Cup simply designated a portion of regular season conference games in the first half of the season. The team from each conference with the top record in the Commissioner's Cup game will compete for a $500,000 prize pool in the Cup title game on June 25th. So, folks, plain and simple, the WNBA, for the first time in 21 years, saw their best viewership. And, folks, I think that this year, though, really, I believe, was a tremendous year for women's sports. And, folks, for my time in the industry, and since I was in 8th grade, I have long believed that women's sports have to be on the same level as men's sports. So a lot of you out there probably think that's a stupid notion to think of. But 2023, and even I'd say the last couple years, though, have really, I believe, gotten people who may be on the fence about it on board. And I think that when the WNBA can report numbers of getting $40 million per year from television deals between 3 ESPN networks, CBS Sports, Amazon Prime Video, and having Ion Television, that more eyeballs are getting on the product, more fans are going to games, buying merch and whatnot. And now that you have a 40-game season, that right there is pretty impressive. Now, again, we have a break here for the Olympics, for the Olympic Games in 2024, but also the in-season tournament. And kind of in a way, though, the Commissioner's Cup is kind of in a way almost served as a de facto league final. We had the Liberty and Aces play for the Commissioner's Cup last season. That wound up being the league final, with Vegas winning the title again, winning back-to-back titles for the first time that we saw a team do so in 21 years, though. But I also like, though, how the WNBA kind of in a way now copycatted the NBA philosophy. Let's take 2 weeks in June and play our 5 games for the Commissioner's Cup for our IST. Their format, I think, folks, is a lot better because, again, I know it's a very small condensed league, though, of 12 teams right now, but it's 5 games against the 5 other conference opponents in the 2-week span. Best overall records go to the Commissioner's Cup final. I think that I think that could be like a blueprint for the NBA, as I had said here, folks, a while back. That would be a great way for the NBA to look at this IST and think, how can we tweak our IST after our first year of locking in people in November? Now, I think the only good thing about the WNBA right now is that this is not a very long process. This whole tournament is going to be done in June. It will be done within the month of June, and it won't spill over into the month of December or the month of July, I should say, because of the Olympic break. So this could be a great way, I think, for the NBA to mold their product for their IST over how the WNBA has done it. But also, folks, that I cannot be more thrilled for the direction right now that women's sports is going. When I began my women's basketball podcast, when I was in college, back in 2013 and 2014, the league had just gone through the next 3. We had the 3 to see, or the big 3, back with Cheryl Swoops and Rebecca Lobo, and with Lisa Leslie. Then by 2013, we had the next 3. We had Brittany Griner, Skylar Diggins, and Elena Deladon, who kind of were going to flip the league on its head, though, in a good way. Griner in the Mercury won a title her second year in the league in 2014 and won 29 games, a then league record, under the old 34-game schedule format. And I kind of feel like, though, when I began my podcast endeavors with women's basketball, where I was covering the WNBA and women's basketball from the offseason and through college year-round, that was kind of when I thought to myself that women's sports was on the incline. Because at that time, the LA Sparks had just, I think, begun a brand new deal with the Lakers and their TV station at then called Time Warner Cable Sportsnet to get more, to get all their games other than national TV games on television locally in the SoCal market. I really think, though, that the past decade could not be better for this league. Because when I first kind of began covering the WNBA as a podcast host, I kind of thought that people actually, cared about it. Then I found out the hard way via reading comment sections on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram about how it wasn't that way. And kind of in a way, maybe I try to, maybe in some, loony way, back then I felt like I was trying to change that narrative that people, and even for that matter, male sports fans, cared about seeing women's sports succeed. And I think that the last 10 years are cannot be dismissed. That there has been significant advances made with how women's sports are now being covered, with better television deals in place, how the WNBA and the NWSL have been shattering records, whether it be for attendance. The national title game for the volleyball season at the college level sold out last night or on a Sunday between Texas and Nebraska. How Nebraska's volleyball team sold out the football stadium for a game. How Callan McClurg has really turned the college game around on its head this season. LSU coming off of the title last season. Don Staley in South Carolina just obliterating the opponents right now that they've been playing against right now. But then, like, the NWSL coming to San Diego and LA, and how women's soccer has been so well embraced in San Diego, shattering attendance records every season. 32,000 people their first home game at Snapdragon Stadium after playing at USD's Torero Stadium. Selling out a good majority of their games. Angel City FC having great attendance up in Los Angeles at BMO Stadium. Now the NWSL is expanding to the Bay Area, going back to Salt Lake City to play for the Utah Royals. The WNBA adding a team in the Bay Area next season in 2025. Preseason games in Toronto. Talk of a Connecticut Sun game being played in Boston at the Garden this year. Like, we're entering, folks, like a new era, and I think a very long overdue era for women's sports. The NWSL, the WNBA, the newly launching Professional Women's Hockey League, you know, with their original 6 teams, how college basketball, college volleyball have taken off on the women's level, how college softball is always fun to watch come March and April and May in the summer during their tournament runs. Like, this is just so extraordinary to see. That finally, folks, after all the years of, you know, being afterthoughts and all of the, like in a way, like all the crap that these athletes and these leagues have gone through to get here now within the last decade, just is so reassuring that we can give young girls and young women out there players to look up to, and knowing, hey, you could be the next big name WNBA superstar. You can be the next big name NWSL superstar. You know, you can go to college and play your sport and be a big name and earn money off your, off NIL deals and whatnot. And I think a lot of that credit, though, goes to the NBA for starting the WNBA back in 96, into 97. And also that with all of the nonsense, though, folks, that I don't think that there is a better time right now. If you are on the fence about embracing women's sports, I would really hope, though, if you are out there watching this podcast right now, I would really hope if you have a young daughter, if you have a niece, I would really hope, though, that you don't stoop to those levels of the malarkey that I read a lot on articles about women's sports. If you have a daughter or if you have a niece, and if they want to become a basketball player or a soccer player, don't steer them away from their dreams. Don't tell them that they can't do it, or don't tell them not to do it, because there are avenues out there now. You know, it's not like maybe when I was younger, where we only had the WNBA and the soccer craze wasn't very big till we won the World Cup in 99, though. I just dread those, seeing like people who want to troll women's sports, but when they have their daughter or their niece in their profile avatars, that really infuriates and disgusts me. That you can talk down on women's sports, though, yet if your daughter or niece wants to become an athlete themselves, are you going to be, just treat them like you're treating these other players out there, or basically just wanting to troll the WNBA or the NWSL? Yet you want to also kind of, in a way, crap upon your daughter's dreams, maybe. That mainly infuriates me more than anything else, though, is that we see this happen a lot, though. But I think, though, that right now, yeah, can't stop, won't stop. I don't see women's sports slowing down right now. I really don't, though. And it warms my heart, though, because like I said, when I broke into doing podcasting for the WNBA, kind of began podcasting back in 2013 through 2015, roughly, it was not in a good place. It had just kind of, it was like the foundation had been laid, and now we have built a very great house on top of that foundation. And I would really just dread to see anything worse come out of it, though. But the WNBA, though, folks, is making great strides. The NWSL is making great strides. Women's soccer is making great strides. College women's sports are making great strides. That right now, if you're a women's sportsman like me, it's a great time to be a part of it. And if you're thinking about getting on board, we got plenty of room. Come on in, invest your time, your effort, your energy. And again, be a bit of like a beacon, be like a bit of a beacon light out there for girls out there to not chase their dreams. Let's be there for our daughters, for our nieces. Let's be there for them if they want to become basketball players, soccer players, or get into sports in general. Let's not sabotage them because we feel like that their sport is not on the same level as men's sports or whatever the factors may be out there. Bet on women. That's a hashtag I see a lot is bet on women, especially if we have nieces, if we have daughters, support their journey. Because what we're seeing right now is, I think, just the beginning of the climb to the top of the mountain for women's sports right now with where they're at. Again, great TV deals are in place with the NWSL and the WNBA. Kind of eager to see how the PWHL makes their TV deal work with either NHL Network or local television. But I'm very proud, though, to be a women's sports fan, and I'm very glad, though, to see where it's going. Because right now it is on a very great trajectory, and it's going to be here to stay. Whether people out there like it or not, women's sports are here to stay, though. And now the WNBA going to a 40-game season schedule again like this year, though, and revamping the Commissioner's Cup tournament format. And how that this sport has been embraced finally by markets like Vegas, other than the original 8 and original 4 that's left of the Liberty and the Mercury and the Aces and the Sparks. It's such a great time right now seeing how women's sports are climbing and how they still, though, break barriers, they break records, and how they are still shattering glass ceilings, though. And it's been so fun to see how far they've come in the last decade. When again, like comparing it again, when I first broke into doing a podcast for college when I was covering the WNBA 10 years ago, it was kind of beginning to get traction, but now the traction has paid off to where it's at now. Multiple TV deals in place with ESPN and ION, Amazon Prime, CBS Sports, the NWSL with the same thing with Paramount Plus and CBS. It's such a great time. I'm so happy to be a part of it, and I can't wait to see where, in fact, that this will take us as more time goes on. With that, folks, as a reminder, after tonight we are going on a lengthy holiday break. We'll be back with you folks in the new year on January 3rd, 2024 for our next live edition of Press Row. We will, though, folks, be having some best of episodes to fill some voids over the course of the next couple of days and weeks, beginning on December 20th and 21st and through Christmas Day and through New Year's Eve. We'll have some best of shows here that we can put on air in our 3:30 time slot as we, in fact, roll on and we come back in the new year in 2024. With that, though, folks, it's been a great time here seeing you folks on Press Row. But again, we'll be back with you following our holiday break on January 3rd, 2024, 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. But again, we'll have a very solid about week plus of best of episodes here to fill our gaps during our usual time slots here while I'm at work and on our break. With that, though, folks, from all of us here at C2C and for yours truly, Callan McClurg, saying goodnight here from San Diego. And again, thank you all so much for your support. And I wish you all and yours a very happy, fun, and safe holiday and Christmas holiday, and a very, very, very warm and safe and happy holiday season here today and through the next couple of weeks of time. Till next time, folks. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. We'll see you back here again, folks, on January 3rd at 3:30 p.m. back here on the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, folks. Till next time. Good night. Bye-bye.